Have you ever wondered what a perfect sound would be like? I mean, a truly perfect mirror image of your favorite song, just bigger, louder. Well, today we're going to dive into an engineering dream that chases exactly that, the Class A amplifier. And trust me, it's a fascinating story about this constant battle engineers face, between absolute perfection and just practical reality. And that really brings up a huge question. What's the real price of perfect sound? Because, as we're about to find out, getting that absolutely pure, untouched signal, well, it comes with a seriously heavy cost. And here's the kicker. It has nothing to do with money. All right, let's get into it. To really understand what makes a Class A amp so special, you first have to get your head around the basic challenge for any amplifier out there. It really is a quest for purity. So on paper, the goal sounds pretty simple, right? You take this tiny, delicate input signal, think of it coming from a microphone or maybe a turntable, and you just have to make it big enough to power a speaker. But here's the hard part. The real trick is doing that without adding any noise or changing its shape or introducing any distortion whatsoever. What you're after is a perfect, exact replica, just bigger. So, how in the world do you pull that off? How do you make that perfect copy? Well, the solution engineers came up with is, honestly, it's beautifully simple. Almost a brute force approach, really. They just decided to leave the amplifier on, like all the time. And that right there, that's the heart of what a Class A amplifier is. The main component doing the work, the transistor, is always conducting electricity. It never ever switches off. Not for a fraction of a second as long as it's running. You know how an audio wave goes up and then down, right? Well, a Class A amp's transistor is wide open, fully active, for that entire 360-degree cycle. It handles the whole thing, the positive part, the negative part, all by itself, no breaks. And this always-on strategy, well, it's the key to everything that makes it so incredible, and, as you'll see, so incredibly flawed. Okay, so how does just being on all the time actually lead to that perfect, pure sound? It all comes down to this really elegant balancing act that's happening deep inside the circuit. See, to pull off this always-on thing, the transistor has to be in a state of, well, perfect readiness. The best way to picture it is like a seesaw that's balanced perfectly level, not tipping one way or the other. Engineers have a name for this. They call it the Q point or quiescent point. And what it means is that the transistor is basically idling at half power, just waiting, ready to swing up or down the very instant that audio signal comes through. And that perfect balance, that's the secret sauce. That's where the purity comes from. Because that transistor is always active, it can trace that entire audio wave super smoothly. This totally avoids a nasty little problem called crossover distortion. That's a tiny glitch you can get in other amplifier designs, right at the moment the signal gets handed off from one part to another. But with Class A, there is no handoff. It's just one component doing all the work, all the time, completely seamlessly. I mean, it sounds perfect, right? It's the simplest design, and it gives you the absolute purest signal. You'd think every single amplifier on the planet would be made this way. But this is where the story takes a very sharp turn. Because all that elegance, it comes with a massive hidden price tag. So yeah, I know what you're thinking. What's the catch? There has to be a catch, right? If this thing is so perfect, why isn't it in every phone, every car, every stereo? Well, the catch is one word: efficiency. Or maybe more accurately, a brutal lack of it. Get this, under the absolute best, most perfect lab conditions for a common Class A design, the maximum efficiency you can possibly get is just 50%. And in a lot of the simpler versions, it's even worse, down around 25%. Just think about what that actually means. In the best case scenario, for every single watt of power that's actually used to make your music louder, another watt is just gone, wasted, turned into pure heat. And that's when you've got it cranked up, when the amplifier is just sitting there, quiet. Pretty much all the power it's pulling from your wall socket is being converted directly into heat. And all that heat has to go somewhere, right? This is exactly why Class A amps have this reputation for being absolute monsters. They're huge, they're heavy, and they run incredibly hot. They need these gigantic metal heat sinks. Those big fins you see on serious high-end audio gear. That's not just for looks. They need them just to stop from literally cooking themselves to death. So let's just lay it all out on the table. This isn't really a simple good versus bad situation. It is a classic textbook engineering trade-off. You are literally trading raw power and efficiency for sonic purity. And it really boils down to this. In the plus column, you get the absolute best signal purity money can buy. We're talking incredible linearity and absolutely zero crossover distortion. The design is elegant and simple, and the sound quality is just sublime. But in the minus column, the price you pay is steep. Absolutely terrible efficiency, which leads to a ton of heat. That means it needs big heat sinks, making it large, heavy, and expensive. And yeah, you could never, ever dream of putting one of these things in anything that runs on a battery. So with all these huge drawbacks, you have to ask, does the Class A amplifier even have a place anymore? I mean, in our modern world? And the answer is, oh, absolutely. In a few very specific, very important niches, purity is still king. You're going to find them in those super high-end audiophile systems, where people will happily pay their electric bill and deal with the heat just to get that last ounce of sonic perfection. But you'll also find them in really critical spots, like the very first stage of a microphone preamp or in a super sensitive radio receiver, places where that initial signal is incredibly tiny and fragile, and keeping it perfectly clean is the most important job. In those situations, the trade-off is absolutely worth it. And that really brings us right back to where we started. In a world that is completely obsessed with efficiency, with saving every last watt of power, and making everything smaller and smaller, is there still room for a design that just stubbornly puts purity above everything else? Well, for a dedicated few, the answer is a definite yes. It's the purist's bargain, and it's a deal they are still more than willing to take.